We have different skin colors, but does that make us enemies? What does God truly care about, the outer shell or the soul within? These were the thoughts that came to my mind as I read the testimony of this black woman. Her heart stopped for a moment, but that moment stretched into what felt like centuries, because her soul was taken directly by God back to the beginning, and he revealed a profound truth about black people, a truth no one has ever told you before. Though this topic is sensitive and could cost her job, she bravely spoke out. Because, as the Lord said, everyone deserves to know the truth and speak the truth. So I ask you, please take a moment to listen, for she also carries a sacred message. We are praying for everyone who hears this story. If you can, leave a comment saying amen along with your name and the city you live in. That way we can lift you up directly in prayer and ask God's light to shine right to your doorstep. After listening, please share your thoughts in the comments below so we can discuss and seek the most righteous path forward. My name is Olivia, a 47-year-old history teacher of Caribbean descent, living in Toronto, Canada. Growing up, I believed in God, but my faith was more routine than revelation, a habit rather than a calling. As a black woman, I often felt an emptiness when reflecting on my heritage, a shame I buried beneath my work. Teaching history to my students, I avoided the topic of black identity, sidestepping questions that stirred discomfort in my soul. On October 5th, 2023, a crisp autumn evening, my life changed forever. I was driving home after a long day, the city lights blurred by a sudden downpour, when a delivery van swerved into my lane. The crash was deafening, metal twisting, glass shattering, and then silence as darkness swallowed me. For 6 minutes and 42 seconds, my heart stopped, and I stepped into a realm beyond the physical. I found myself floating above the wreckage, watching paramedics work frantically over my lifeless body. Rain soaked the asphalt, and bystanders huddled under umbrellas, their faces pale with shock. A strange peace enveloped me, as if time had paused, and I felt a gentle pull upward. I was no longer bound to the earth, drawn towards something greater than myself. A radiant light appeared, brighter than any sun, yet soft and inviting. It tugged at my soul, pulling me into a dimension where colors danced and sounds hummed with life. Jesus stood before me, his presence overwhelming, a blend of awe-inspiring power and infinite comfort. His love radiated like a warm sun, accepting every part of me, flaws and all. I heard his voice, not with words but in my spirit, clear and perfect. "I will show you the truth long hidden," he said, his presence filling me with purpose. A tunnel of light opened before us, shimmering with promise. I followed him, my heart racing with anticipation, ready to see what he would reveal. The tunnel beckoned, a pathway to eternity, and I stepped forward with Jesus at my side. His love was a shield, his presence a guide through the unknown. I left behind the wreckage of my car, my life, and my doubts. This was the beginning of a journey that would redefine everything I thought I knew. The tunnel was not a dark, foreboding passage, but a corridor ablaze with light, more radiant than any earthly glow. Colors swirled around me, vibrant hues of gold, sapphire, and emerald, pulsing with life as if painted by God's hand. I felt weightless, carried forward by an unseen force, my soul alive with wonder. Jesus' presence beside me was a constant warmth, guiding me deeper into this divine realm. A sound filled the air, a symphony of millions of voices blending in perfect harmony. It wasn't human speech, but a celestial chorus, each note brimming with joy, love, and purity. The melody stirred my soul, as if every good thing in the universe had been distilled into song. I wanted to join, to lose myself in its beauty, but I could only listen, awestruck. My vision expanded, and I saw everything around me in a full circle, clear as if it were inches away. Distant stars gleamed with vivid detail, and I sensed the vastness of creation unfolding before me. Jesus' voice spoke within me, "You taught the world's history, but missed my history with my people." His words pierced my heart, revealing my ignorance of his divine plan. The tunnel's light grew brighter, its walls shimmering like liquid crystal. I moved faster, not by my own power but by his will, time dissolving into eternity. Every moment felt like a lifetime, yet no time at all, as if I were racing toward the heart of creation. Jesus' presence steadied me, his love a beacon in the overwhelming splendor. I saw glimpses of heavenly landscapes, fields of light, rivers of crystal, and beings radiating joy. The tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly, yet I felt no fear, only a longing to see more. Jesus walked beside me, his robe glowing, his presence a promise of truth. I knew I was being led to a revelation that would change me forever. The chorus grew louder, its harmony vibrating through my being, as if calling me home. I saw fleeting images of my life, moments where I ignored God's quiet call. Jesus' voice echoed again, "You will see what I have always seen." His words filled me with purpose, preparing me for the vision ahead. The tunnel's light enveloped me, warm and alive, as if it were breathing. I sensed I was leaving Earth far behind, entering a realm where God's truth reigned supreme. Jesus' presence was my anchor, his love guiding me toward the unknown. I surrendered to his call, ready to witness the hidden history he would unveil. As the tunnel's end approached, I felt a shift, a deepening of the light's intensity. Jesus' hand guided me forward, his presence both gentle and commanding. "Come, Olivia, and see my truth," he said, his voice resonating in my soul. I stepped into the light, eager to discover the secrets he would reveal. Jesus guided me from the radiant tunnel into a vision of ancient splendor, where golden skies bathed vibrant cities in warmth. Black communities thrived, their people adorned as scholars, warriors, and priests, their lives woven with divine purpose. Jesus' voice resounded, clear and commanding, "These are my chosen, forgotten by the world, but never by me." His words unveiled a truth that stirred my soul, revealing a heritage I had never known. The scene shifted to a bustling Nubian city, its streets alive with artisans crafting tools of astonishing precision. Scholars gathered in open courtyards, their scrolls filled with knowledge of astronomy and medicine that surpassed their era. Jesus walked among them, his presence a radiant light, affirming their sacred connection to God. He pointed to Psalm 68:31, "Princes shall come out of Egypt, Ethiopia shall soon stretch out her hands unto God," explaining that these nations were anointed with divine wisdom to glorify him. Temples rose before me, where black priests lifted their voices in worship, their chants harmonizing with heaven's chorus. Their faith was pure, their devotion a beacon of God's glory. Jesus' eyes shone with pride as he spoke. This was their beginning, not chains but honor. His words shattered the lies I had taught, replacing shame with awe for my people's legacy. The vision carried me to ancient Israel, where black men and women served in sacred councils, their authority rooted in God's call. Jesus stood beside them, his hand blessing their work as witnesses to his truth. He referenced Isaiah 43:10, "Ye are my witnesses, saith the Lord," showing how they carried his light across generations. Their faith endured through exile, a testament to God's unbreakable covenant. Time surged forward, revealing the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade, where their glory was buried beneath suffering. Jesus' face grew solemn, his voice heavy with sorrow. The enemy sought to erase their identity, but I never forgot them. He explained how their contributions were hidden, their story rewritten to diminish their divine calling. The truth of their resilience burned in my heart, a fire of restoration. I saw marketplaces vibrant with black healers, their remedies drawn from God's creation, healing bodies and souls. Jesus walked among them, his presence affirming their gifts. "They were my scholars, my warriors, my priests," he said, echoing Acts 17:26, which declares all nations are made from one blood, united in his purpose. Their knowledge was a divine gift, meant to reflect his glory. The vision showed communities torn apart by chains, yet their spiritual legacy lingered in whispered prayers and coded songs. Jesus' light guided them through centuries of pain, his love a constant anchor. "I have always been with them," he said, his voice a promise of redemption. I saw their story not as defeat but as a divine tapestry of endurance. I witnessed ancient astronomers charting the stars, their maps precise and sacred, guided by God's hand. Jesus stood among them, his love affirming their wisdom. "Their knowledge was my gift, meant to glorify me," he said, tying their work to his eternal plan. The vision rewrote the history I had taught, filling me with reverence. The scenes unfolded further, revealing black poets crafting hymns that echoed in heaven. Jesus' presence illuminated their words, his voice clear, their voices carried my truth. He pointed to Psalm 33:3, urging new songs of praise, showing their creativity as a divine offering. I saw their legacy, hidden but alive, waiting to be reclaimed. I saw villages where black leaders governed with justice, their laws rooted in God's wisdom. Jesus walked through their courts, his light blessing their work. They ruled in my name, he said, affirming their divine authority. The vision stirred my soul, urging me to honor their forgotten glory. The vision showed ancient libraries, filled with scrolls of black knowledge, now lost to time. Jesus' presence was a call to restore what was stolen. Their story is not lost, he said, his voice unwavering. I felt the weight of their heritage, a truth I had to share. The scenes began to fade, but Jesus' truth remained, a fire in my soul. His eyes blazed with purpose. As he spoke, "Tell my people who they are." His command ignited my mission, a call to proclaim their divine legacy. I knew I had to speak to restore the honor of my people's forgotten heritage. The vision darkened, and I stood before ancient libraries, their shelves engulfed in flames, scrolls of black history crumbling to ash. Men in shadowed robes tore down records, rewriting narratives to bury the truth of my people's glory. Jesus stood beside me, his face etched with sorrow, his presence a beacon in the darkness. The enemy sought to erase my people's light, he said, his voice heavy with divine justice. I saw councils gathered in torchlit halls, where lies were sown, declaring black people inferior, their legacy reduced to servitude. The air grew thick with deception, as if truth itself mourned the loss. Jesus' light pierced the shadows, exposing the manipulation that twisted history. He referenced 2 Corinthians 4:4, explaining how the God of this world blinds minds to God's truth, seeking to hide his plan for his people. Villages burned, their sacred texts destroyed, replaced with tales of subjugation that silenced their heritage. I saw black children taught they were less, their pride stripped by false narratives. Jesus' voice cut through the darkness. This was not my plan, but the enemy's war. His words revealed a spiritual battle waged to obscure God's design. I witnessed colonial powers carving up Africa, their greed drowning out the songs of its people. Jesus walked through the chaos, his robe untouched by the lies, his presence a testament to enduring truth. My word stands forever, he said, affirming Psalm 119:89. Forever, O Lord, thy word is settled in heaven. The enemy's schemes could not erase his divine purpose. The vision showed generations taught to forget their divine calling, their identity warped by centuries of oppression. Jesus' eyes burned with righteous anger, yet his love remained steadfast. I see every wound, every lie, he said, his voice a promise of restoration. I felt the weight of this distortion, a longing to set the record straight. In modern classrooms, I saw history books omitting the glory of black civilizations, leaving students rootless. Jesus stood among them, his presence urging the truth to rise. The enemy fights to keep them ignorant, he said, pointing to their God-given potential. He echoed Jeremiah 29:11, promising a future and hope, a plan unbroken by lies. The lies spread through time, from ancient scribes to modern media, diminishing black worth with relentless deception. Jesus' hand pointed to hidden truths, preserved in oral traditions and sacred songs. My people are not what the world says, he declared, his voice unwavering. I saw the spiritual war raging, a battle for their identity and faith. I saw ancient artifacts buried, their inscriptions erased by those who feared their power. Jesus' presence was a call to unearth these truths, his light guiding the way. Their story lives in me, he said, affirming his eternal knowledge of his people. I felt the urgency to reclaim what was stolen, to restore their honor. The vision showed markets where black voices were silenced, their contributions dismissed as myth. Jesus walked through these scenes, his love affirming their worth. I have seen their works, he said, echoing Hebrews 6:10, where God remembers the labor of his people. The truth of their legacy burned in my heart, a fire to share. I saw modern screens flashing lies, portraying black people as less than God's creation. Jesus' voice resounded, I made them for my glory. His words reflected Genesis 1:27, where all are created in his image. I saw the enemy's strategy, twisting truth to bind souls. The vision revealed centuries of erasure, yet Jesus' light shone brighter, a promise of redemption. His presence was my guide, his love my strength. Speak what you have seen, he commanded, his voice a charge to action. I knew I had to expose these lies, to proclaim his truth, no matter the cost. The vision unfolded like a tapestry, weaving through time from ancient African empires to modern cities. I saw black communities rise in glory, their cities gleaming with divine purpose, only to be shattered by chains and conquest. Jesus stood beside me, his presence a steady light in the darkness. Not because they were weak, but because they were strong. He said, his voice revealing the enemy's fear of their power. In the Mali Empire, universities bustled with black scholars, their wisdom a beacon of God's light, illuminating the world. Colonizers arrived, tearing down knowledge, replacing it with servitude and suffering. Jesus' voice echoed through the ages. The enemy targeted their strength. He explained Ephesians 6:12, showing that this oppression was a spiritual battle against principalities, not just human greed. The slave trade unfolded before me, ships carrying souls across oceans, their faith tested in unimaginable pain. Jesus walked among them, his love sustaining their spirits through the darkest nights. I never left them, he said, affirming Romans 8:35, that nothing can separate us from his love. Their resilience, singing spirituals in the holds of ships, was a testament to his presence. I saw colonial powers divide families, stripping away names, languages, and heritage. Jesus' eyes burned with sorrow, yet his voice was firm. Their identity is in me. He pointed to Galatians 3:28, where all are one in Christ, revealing the lie of division sown by the enemy. Their faith endured, hidden in coded songs and secret prayers. In modern times, systemic barriers rose, from red-lined neighborhoods to biased media, silencing black voices. Jesus stood among the marginalized, his presence a call to rise above the lies. They are my warriors, forged in fire, he said, his voice filled with pride. I saw the strength of those who persevered, their spirits unbroken by the world's deceit. Young people turned from faith, lured by false promises of fame and fleeting success. Jesus' hand rested on their shoulders, urging them to return to him. The enemy seeks to steal their destiny, he said, echoing John 10:10, where he offers abundant life. I felt a burning urgency to restore their divine calling, to awaken their true identity. I saw communities fractured by policies that profited from their pain, yet glimmers of hope shone through. Jesus' presence was a constant, his love a beacon in the darkness. I have plans for them, plans for good, he said, affirming Jeremiah 29:11, promising a future filled with hope. Their heritage waited to be reclaimed, a legacy of divine strength. The vision showed ancient kings, their crowns gleaming with God's authority, now forgotten by history. Jesus walked among them, his light affirming their reign. They ruled in my name, he said, echoing Psalm 72:11, where all kings bow to him. I saw their legacy, a call to rise above oppression. I witnessed markets where black artisans were once celebrated, now erased from memory. Jesus' voice resounded, their work glorified me. He referenced Colossians 3:23, urging all to work heartily for the Lord. Their contributions were a divine offering, waiting to be restored. The cycles of oppression continued, yet Jesus' truth held firm, a promise of redemption. His light illuminated their path, calling them to rise. Tell them who they are, he commanded, his voice my guide. I knew I had to break these cycles, to proclaim their divine heritage. The vision revealed churches, from grand cathedrals to humble chapels, where black voices were silenced, their gifts overlooked. Pastors dismissed their leadership, pews ignored their cries, and systems tore families apart for profit. Jesus stood among them, his face heavy with grief, his presence a call to repentance. My bride has rejected my chosen, he said, his voice urging the church to turn back to him. I saw black families divided, children taken by systems that thrived on their suffering. Jesus walked through their homes, his light a balm to their wounds, his love unwavering. I see their tears, he said, echoing Psalm 56:8, where God records every tear in his book. His promise of restoration shone through the darkness of rejection. Young black men and women chased fleeting pleasures, lost in a world of social media and entertainment. Jesus stood before them, his light exposing the emptiness of their pursuits. They seek what cannot satisfy, he said, pointing to Isaiah 55:2, urging them to seek true fulfillment in him. Their potential remained, dimmed but not extinguished by the world's distractions. Churches preached prosperity and comfort, ignoring the spiritual heritage of black believers. Jesus' presence was a rebuke, his voice clear and piercing, "My kingdom is not of this world." He referenced Matthew 6:33, calling them to seek his righteousness above all else. I felt the weight of their rejection, longing to see their faith restored. I saw black youth in urban streets, their faith drowned by noise and deception. Jesus walked among them, his love undeterred by their wandering, his presence a call to return. "They are mine, called for my purpose," he said, affirming 1 Peter 2:9, a chosen generation and royal priesthood. Their divine identity waited to be reclaimed, a spark ready to ignite. The vision showed communities fractured by systems that profited from division, yet Jesus' light shone through the cracks. He stood in their midst, his presence a call to unity and healing. "I have not forgotten my people," he said, his voice unwavering in its promise. I saw the church's failure, but also his plan for renewal. Families prayed in secret, their faith a quiet rebellion against rejection and despair. Jesus' hand blessed their efforts, his love their strength in the shadows. "Their prayers reach my throne," he said, echoing Hebrews 4:16, inviting them to approach his grace boldly. I knew their voices would rise again, if only the church would listen. I saw churches where black leaders were sidelined, their gifts dismissed as unworthy. Jesus' presence was a challenge, his voice resolute. "I chose them for my glory." He referenced Acts 10:34, showing God's impartiality, calling all to his service. The vision stirred my heart, urging me to speak for those ignored. The vision revealed small gatherings where black believers worshipped in defiance of rejection. Jesus stood among them, his light amplifying their faith. "Their worship is precious to me," he said, echoing Psalm 141:2, where prayer rises like incense. I saw the power of their devotion, a foundation for revival. The scenes faded, but Jesus' call to action burned brightly, his eyes filled with urgency. "Tell my church to embrace them," he commanded, his voice my mandate. I felt the weight of his mission, ready to proclaim his truth. The church had rejected his chosen, but his love would triumph. The vision shifted to a modern world where music and media wove chains of deception around black souls. Songs glorified violence, lust, and materialism, portraying black people as criminals or objects, not heirs of God's kingdom. Jesus stood in the midst, his presence exposing the lies that bound them. "The enemy uses their gifts against them," he said, his voice revealing a spiritual war waged through culture. Music videos flashed on screens, their images degrading black worth, stripping away their divine identity. Jesus' eyes burned with sorrow, yet his love remained steadfast, a beacon of truth. "My people are not what the world portrays," he said, echoing Psalm 139:14, where we are fearfully and wonderfully made. The enemy twisted their creativity, turning songs of praise into tools of destruction. Young black children absorbed these lies, their heritage replaced with stereotypes which eroded their pride. Jesus walked among them, his light offering truth amidst the noise of deception. "I gave them voices to praise me," he said, pointing to their God-given gifts meant for worship. I saw the potential of their songs, created for glory, not degradation. In classrooms, history books omitted black contributions, leaving youth rootless and disconnected from their legacy. Jesus stood beside them, his presence a call to remembrance, his voice clear. "Their story is mine," he said, affirming Acts 17:26, where all nations are united in his plan. I felt the urgency to restore their true narrative, to reclaim their divine heritage. Media portrayed black men as threats, black women as disposable, drowning out their divine calling with relentless lies. Jesus' voice cut through the deception. "I created them for my glory." He referenced Isaiah 43:7, showing their purpose in his kingdom. a purpose the enemy sought to bury. I saw the strategy of this spiritual assault, using entertainment to steal their identity. Social media amplified the deception, luring youth with promises of fame and fleeting pleasures. Jesus' presence was a beacon, calling them back to truth, his love unwavering. "Seek me and you will find life," he said, echoing Matthew 7:7, where those who seek him find his truth. I longed to see them reclaim their voices for his praise. I saw music studios where songs of rebellion replaced hymns of worship, binding souls in chains of lies. Jesus stood among the artists, his light exposing the emptiness of their work. "Their voices were meant for my kingdom," he said, affirming Colossians 3:16, where songs glorify God. I saw the power of their gifts, waiting to be redirected to his glory. The vision revealed a world designed to distract, yet Jesus' love was unrelenting, his presence piercing the darkness. He stood among the lost, his light a call to awakening. "Their songs will rise again," he promised, his voice filled with hope for their redemption. I knew I had to warn them of the enemy's weapon, to restore their true song. I saw young people dancing to rhythms that glorified destruction, unaware of their divine calling. Jesus' voice resounded, "I gave them rhythm for my praise." He referenced Psalm 154, calling for instruments and dance to honor him. I felt the urgency to redirect their gifts, to break the enemy's chains. The lies of music and media faded before Jesus' truth, his presence my guide through the chaos. "Tell them to sing for me," he commanded, his voice igniting my mission. I felt the weight of his call, ready to proclaim his truth to a world deceived. The enemy's chains would break, and his people would rise in worship. The vision brightened, revealing sparks of revival igniting black communities across the globe. Young people gathered in hidden rooms, their prayers rising with fervent faith, shaking the heavens. Jesus stood among them, his face radiant with pride, his presence a fire of renewal. "These are my warriors, forged in the fire of trial," he said, echoing Ezekiel 37:10, where his breath brings life to dry bones. I saw a widowed mother kneeling in tears, her prayers a powerful cry that reached God's throne. Jesus' hand rested on her, his light affirming her unwavering faith. "Her cries have reached me," he said, referencing Psalm 34:17, where the righteous cry and God delivers them. Her intercession was a spark, kindling the flames of a coming revival. Communities filled small churches, studying God's word with a hunger I had never seen. Jesus walked through their midst, his light igniting their hearts with truth. "They are remembering who they are," he said, affirming 1 Peter 2:9, where his people are a royal priesthood, called to his light. I saw the seeds of awakening, ready to bloom into a global movement. Young black men and women stood in streets, preaching truth with boldness, unafraid of rejection. Jesus' presence empowered them, his love their strength against the world's scorn. "They are my prophets, my healers," he said, echoing Joel 2:28, where his spirit is poured out on all flesh. Their courage signaled a new era of faith, unstoppable by man. Families once broken were restored, their homes filled with worship, their voices rising in harmony. Jesus stood at their doors, his light healing wounds of division and pain. I saw the power of his restoration, uniting generations in his name. The vision showed black youth rejecting the world's lies, embracing their divine identity with unwavering conviction. Jesus' eyes shone with joy, his voice clear and triumphant. "They are rising in my power." He pointed to Revelation 5:10, where his people reign as kings and priests in his kingdom. I felt the surge of revival, a movement no force could halt. Miracles unfolded before me, healings of body and soul, reconciliations of families, and prophetic words breaking forth like rivers. Jesus' presence was the source, his love the catalyst for this awakening. "My spirit is moving among them," he said, affirming Acts 2:17, where his spirit brings visions and dreams. I saw a generation claiming their calling, unshackled by the past. I saw small gatherings grow into global movements, churches filled with worship, streets alive with testimony. Jesus' voice resounded, "No one can halt what I have ordained." His words echoed Isaiah 55:11, where his purpose prevails, unstoppable by human hands. I knew this revival was his plan, and I had to proclaim it to the world. I witnessed communities reclaiming their heritage, their prayers shaking the foundations of deception. Jesus stood among them, his light amplifying their faith. Their worship is a weapon, he said, referencing Psalm 149:6, where praise is a sword in his hands. I saw the power of their revival, a force to reshape history. Before the vision ended, Jesus looked at me, his eyes filled with purpose and urgency. "You have feet, go and tell them," he commanded, his voice a clarion call to action. I longed to stay in his presence, but his mission was clear, burning in my soul. I would carry this vision of revival, proclaiming it to a world in need of his truth. The vision darkened, revealing a world under siege, not by swords or fire but by subtle, insidious deception. A new system emerged, rewarding conformity with wealth and comfort, while punishing faith with isolation and loss. Jesus stood above the chaos, his face resolute, his presence a beacon of truth. "This is the enemy's final assault," he said, his voice a warning of the spiritual battle to come. I saw pastors preaching false gospels, their words pleasing crowds but empty of God's truth. Jesus' presence exposed their deception, his light piercing the lies that seduced the masses. "They speak for themselves, not for me," he said, echoing 2 Timothy 4:3, where people seek teachers to suit their desires. The church faltered, but his truth stood firm, unshaken by human failure. The system offered ease, acceptance, and prosperity, but demanded rejection of faith as its price. Jesus walked among the tempted, his voice calling them back from the edge of destruction. "The enemy comes not with violence, but with comfort," he warned, affirming Matthew 24:24, where false Christs deceive even the elect. I saw the danger of choosing temporary ease over eternal truth. Humanity divided into 2 camps, those who stood for truth, facing loss but protected by God's hand, and those who embraced the world's lies, seduced by its promises. Jesus' eyes burned with justice, yet his love remained, reaching out to the lost. "My faithful will be kept," he said, referencing John 17:15, where he prays for protection from the evil one. I felt the weight of the choice, a decision that would shape eternity. The faithful faced isolation, their jobs and voices stripped away by a system that hated truth. Jesus stood beside them, his presence their shield, his love their strength. "I am their strength," he said, echoing Isaiah 41:10, promising to uphold his own in times of trial. I saw miracles sustaining them, their faith a testimony to his power. Those who chose comfort drifted further, their hearts hardened by the allure of deception. Jesus' voice called out, urgent and clear, "Return to while there is time." His words reflected Revelation 3:20, where he stands at the door and knocks, seeking those who will hear. I longed to warn them, to pull them back from the abyss. I saw communities lured by the system's promises, their faith eroded by convenience. Jesus' presence was a call to awakening, his light exposing the emptiness of their choices. "My kingdom offers true life," he said, affirming John 10:10, where he gives life abundant. I saw the contrast between the world's lies and his eternal truth. The vision showed a world teetering on the brink, yet Jesus' light shone brighter, a promise of ultimate victory. His presence was unwavering, his love a constant call to redemption. "My truth will prevail," he said, affirming Daniel 7:14, where his kingdom endures forever. I knew the battle was his, but the call to stand was mine to share. The enemy's system grew stronger, its influence spreading like a shadow, but Jesus' power was greater. His voice resounded through the chaos, "Tell them to choose me." I felt the urgency of his command, ready to proclaim his warning to a world deceived. The final battle loomed, and I had to prepare hearts for his truth. The vision faded, and Jesus' voice grew clear, his presence filling my soul with purpose. "Seek me as never before," he said, his words a command to live fully for him. He urged me to read his word, pray without ceasing, and teach children truth before the world's lies took hold. I saw his face, radiant with love, calling me to action. He explained 1 Thessalonians 5:17, pray without ceasing, showing prayer as a lifeline to his presence. His voice was urgent, his love compelling me to move. "Do not fear, do not be silenced," he said, echoing Joshua 1:9, commanding strength and courage. I felt his strength infuse me, ready to face the world. I saw families gathered around Bibles, their faith a shield against deception. Jesus stood among them, his light guiding their path. "Teach them my truth," he said, affirming Deuteronomy 6:7, to teach his commands diligently. I knew I had to share this call to prepare hearts for his return. The vision showed a world distracted, but Jesus' voice cut through the noise. "Be vigilant, hold fast to me," he commanded, his words echoing 1 Peter 5:8, warning of the enemy's schemes. His presence was my anchor, urging me to stand firm. I felt the weight of his mission, a call to awaken the sleeping. I awoke in the hospital, monitors beeping, doctors marveling at my survival. Jesus' voice lingered. "You are not to convince, only to testify." His words echoed Acts 1:8, making me his witness. I knew I had to share this vision, to warn the world before it was too late. I spoke to my family, their eyes wide as I recounted Jesus' revelations. His truth burned in my heart, compelling me to act. "Tell them I am coming," he had said, his voice my guide. I shared his message, undeterred by doubt or fear. I stood before my church, my voice carrying the weight of eternity. Jesus' presence strengthened me, his love my courage. "Prepare now, for the time is short," I urged, echoing his call. I saw some turn away, but others listened, their hearts stirred by truth. The vision of black revival, the enemy's battle, and Jesus' return fueled my mission. His voice resounded, "Speak, and some will hear." I shared his truth online, in classrooms, on streets, knowing lives depended on it. The world needed his warning, and I was his messenger. I awoke to the sterile scent of antiseptic and the beeping of monitors. A nurse gasped when she saw my eyes flutter open apparently. I had been unconscious for almost 12 hours after my heart restarted. Doctors called it a miracle. I knew better. I had died, seen eternity, and now I had returned not because I wanted to, but because Jesus had sent me back with a mission. In the quiet days of recovery, I found myself writing everything. The visions, the words, the scriptures Jesus showed me. I wept often not from pain, but from the unbearable beauty of what I had seen, and the burden of what I now carried. Each word I wrote felt like fire in my bones, too holy to keep hidden, too urgent to delay. I started small. I told my sister, then my pastor, then the Bible study group. Reactions were mixed. Some cried, some were stunned silent, and others politely nodded and never brought it up again. But I kept speaking, because Jesus had said, "You are not to convince, only to testify." I began recording my testimony online. The first video barely reached 100 views, but the third one, where I recounted the vision of ancient black kings serving God, went viral. Messages poured in from Ghana, Haiti, Alabama, London, people saying, "I always felt there was something more. You just confirmed it." Mothers sent videos of their children dancing to gospel music in the living room, yelling, "We're royalty." But not everyone rejoiced. A school board colleague warned me that my content may be seen as racially divisive. I was asked to step away from teaching history for the remainder of the semester. I lost friends, some of whom had sat at my dinner table. A few church leaders accused me of pushing a bushing of gospel. It hurt deeply. Yet I remembered Jesus' voice. "My people are not what the world says. Tell them who they are." One night, I was invited to speak at a small, struggling church in Baltimore. Their youth group had dwindled to 3. But by the end of the service, 20 teenagers came forward crying, repenting, laying down rap lyrics and vape pens and broken identities. One of them, a 17-year-old named Isaiah, later told me, "I thought God didn't care about us. Now I know He made me for something holy." That night, as I prayed in the church basement, Jesus' voice returned, not as thunder but as a whisper. "The seeds have been planted. Some will sprout quickly, some through fire, but my word will not return void." I understood now. This mission wasn't about instant transformation. It was about breaking ground, about calling dry bones to attention, about speaking truth, even if the world calls it rebellion. I speak now in schools that will have me. I gather youth in parks. I whisper to elderly women in hospital beds. I share online in subways, over kitchen counters. And every time I do, I feel Jesus beside me. Not because I'm strong, but because He is faithful. You're reading this now because He wants you to remember. Your heritage isn't slavery, it's priesthood. Your worth isn't in your skin tone, it's in the blood He shed. Your calling is not cancelled, it's awakening. And so I go. Because He said go, because somewhere someone is still asking, God, do you see us? And I am here to say yes, He always has. Olivia's story challenges us to look beyond the surface, to see the soul as God sees it. If tomorrow were your last day, would your life reflect His truth? Don't wait, live with purpose, love with courage, and seek Jesus while He may be found. Share this testimony, comment Amen with your name and city, and join us in prayer as we await the next chapter of God's unfolding plan.
My name is Elijah, a 12-year-old black boy living on the south side of Chicago. Growing up in this neighborhood, I quickly learned that the world was unfair. I wasn't born with hatred, but over time, I felt like the whole world was against me, and white people were part of that injustice. I used to think that even God was on their side. If He loved everyone, why was my life so hard? Why did people like me struggle every day while white kids had it easier? I used to doubt whether God was truly fair, or if He even cared about me. But if I told you that everything I believed in was shattered in an instant, would you believe me? If I told you that my death opened my eyes to a completely different truth, would you dare listen? I saw Him. I stood before Jesus, and in that moment, all my burdens, all my resentments, all my hatreds melted away like mist before the sunlight. I thought I understood the world, but standing before Him, I realized how wrong I was. Listen to my story until the end, because it may change the way you see things. Before my near-death experience, my life was nothing but darkness. At school, teachers seemed to be just waiting to find fault in kids like me. A small mistake was enough to get me punished, while white children only received a gentle reminder. When I walked into a store, I could feel the suspicious stares of the staff, as if I were about to steal something. And the police? They weren't there to protect us. They were there to control us. I had seen my older brother shoved into a patrol car by the police, simply for walking home too late. I had seen my friends being frisked on the street just because they were standing in the wrong place. Even in church, a place that should have been full of love and equality, I felt the discrimination. White children were seated in the front rows, closest to the pastor, while we were pushed to the back. They were seen, heard, and cared for, while we were nothing more than silent shadows. I once asked my mother why it was like that, and she simply said, "That's just how things have always been." But I could not accept it. If God loves everyone, why were we treated differently? I learned the survival rule at a very young age. Bow your head, don't draw attention, don't give them a reason. Yet, even when I did everything right, I still felt like I was seen as a criminal in their eyes. Those experiences gradually became deeply ingrained in my mind. I wasn't born with hatred, but I couldn't ignore what I had witnessed. I began to believe that they would never see me as an equal. And when that truth seeped into my very blood, it left behind something I never wanted to admit: resentment. I didn't want to hate them, but I couldn't stop that feeling. I couldn't forgive the contemptuous looks, the prejudiced words, the subtle acts of discrimination that followed me throughout my life. And then, one day, I died. A near-death experience far more horrifying than anything I had ever imagined. In that moment, when I saw the truth, I wanted to fall to my knees and beg for forgiveness for everything I had ever thought about them. for all my faith was wiped away in just an instant. That night, I was on a routine drug drop, a risk I took every day to survive. I carried a small package of contraband, expecting nothing unusual, but as I turned the corner, red and blue lights exploded into view and sirens filled the air like a warning. In that instant, everything unraveled. Someone had tipped off the police. The moment I was detected, I bolted into the maze of dark alleys. My lungs burned as I sprinted through narrow passageways, vaulting over fences and dodging obstacles. Behind me, shouts, pounding footsteps, and the relentless bark of a police dog merged into one terrifying sound. In that frantic rush, escape was all I could think about. Then, in a blur of motion, fate struck. A violent crash shattered the chaos. Suddenly, silence replaced the sirens and shouts, and I felt as if I were suspended in nothingness. There was no cold or heat, only an eerie calm, as if my body had been left behind. When consciousness returned, it did so with brutal clarity. I looked down in horror. My body lay twisted on the pavement, broken beyond recognition. A crowd had gathered quickly. Amid gasps and frantic phone taps, a desperate cry rang out, "Elijah!" It was my mother, her voice raw with terror as she fought through the onlookers. I longed to reach out, but my voice was gone, and my hands felt like mere wisps of smoke. In that suspended moment between life and death, a profound question gripped me. Was I really gone? Floating in that silent void, I felt time slow until a light appeared, different from the flashing ambulance beams. This light pulsed with warmth and gentle power, beckoning me forward without force. Then he emerged from the glow. In that instant, I knew I was facing something far beyond the earthly realm. His robe shimmered like woven light, and his eyes overflowed with a love so vast it made my soul tremble. I stood frozen, overwhelmed by the realization that I had long believed he was absent, that he had forsaken me, my family, and the hard streets I once roamed. Yet there he was, an embodiment of compassion and mercy. A crushing shame washed over me as I recalled every misstep, turning away from grace, cursing his name in despair, risking everything in a world of contraband, betraying a mother who sacrificed all for me. In that moment, I felt utterly unworthy. Tears blurred my vision as I sank to my knees, not out of fear, but in acknowledgement of my true state. A heavy silence fell between us until, softly, he spoke my name. Elijah. That single word reverberated deep within me, stirring emotions I had long suppressed. In a voice barely above a whisper, I managed, I don't deserve to be here. He stepped closer, enveloping me in a warmth that was more than a mere embrace. You have always been mine, he said calmly, his words gently breaking down the walls built by years of rejection and pain. In that moment, every sneer and every moment of despair melted away, replaced by the undeniable truth that I was not forgotten and never truly alone. The burden of years, the constant battle against a world that saw me as a criminal, a lost soul, crashed down. My shoulders shook as tears flowed freely, washing away the accumulated sorrow. I realized then that every scar, every mistake, had led me to this encounter of redemption. He knelt before me, his eyes full of infinite compassion, and touched my shoulder with a healing, unfiltered love that lifted the crushing weight of guilt and loneliness. Though my past remained, the pain began to ease. Looking up, my voice trembled as I asked, "But why? Why me?" His soft, reassuring smile and steady gaze spoke of mysteries beyond words. "You are not alone, Elijah," he replied. There is more for you to see. In that moment, I felt a gentle pull, a quiet invitation toward a destiny I'd never imagined. I sensed that whatever lay ahead would forever alter my life. My near-death experience was not an end, but the beginning of a profound journey toward healing, redemption, and purpose. Every regret, every scar began to fade, replaced by hope and belonging. The chains of judgment and shame were breaking, giving way to a future illuminated by His light. I knew my life would never be the same. I had been granted a second chance, a chance to rise above the darkness that had defined me. I was seen, loved, and destined for something far greater than the cruelty of the world I once knew. Surrounded by His unwavering love, I found the strength to forgive, not just those who had hurt me, but myself too. I embraced the opportunity to heal and build a new life defined not by past mistakes, but by the limitless potential of a redeemed soul. Every step forward became a testament to a truth I had long forgotten. I was a child of light, meant to rise and transform pain into purpose. And so, in that divine encounter, I vowed to honor this second chance. I would rise above the darkness, seek truth relentlessly, and step boldly into a future filled with hope, forgiveness, and eternal redemption. A sudden shift overwhelmed me, as if the very fabric of reality were tearing apart before my eyes. The radiant light surrounding us rippled and pulsed, and I felt myself being pulled into a realm that defied all understanding. My breath caught in my throat, and I gasped as the world began to unravel, not as I had ever known it, but as Jesus saw it. What I witnessed filled me with both awe and an indescribable terror. At first, everything appeared ordinary. I saw sprawling cities stretching endlessly into the night, their lights flickering like distant stars against the dark sky. Streets bustled with people rushing to work, meeting friends, and caring for their families. Life, on the surface, continued as it always had. Yet, beneath this familiar tapestry, I sensed a profound and unsettling wrongness. Then I saw it clearly. Chains. Not chains forged from cold metal, but invisible bonds that wrapped themselves around the hearts and minds of everyone. These unseen chains moved like dark tendrils through the air, binding us in ways we could neither see nor understand. A creeping, relentless force whispered into our ears, planting seeds of division, twisting our thoughts and distorting our perceptions of one another. It was as if an ancient power was slowly eroding the very essence of humanity. I couldn't tear my gaze away and found my voice trembling as I asked, What is this?" In response, Jesus raised His hand, and suddenly I began to hear the whispers clearly. The air thickened with their presence, as if the murmurs seeped into every corner of existence, into bustling streets, quiet homes, busy workplaces. They were not loud, nor did they need to be. Their power lay in their subtle, insidious ability to infiltrate our consciousness, spreading like a silent poison. I distinctly heard the chilling phrases, "You will never be free. They will always see you as less. You must never forgive." These words slithered into the minds of Black men, women, and children, etching pain and anger on their faces, a burden they did not deserve, yet felt with every fiber of their being. Then, the whispers shifted their focus. "You are guilty by birth. You must atone for what your ancestors have done. You can never do enough." These declarations sank deep into the hearts of white men and women, burdening them with an unearned shame and a debt that could never be repaid. I watched in horror as this web of lies tore apart relationships. Fathers doubting their sons, mothers distrusting their daughters, and friendships crumbling under relentless suspicion. The more I observed, the clearer it became that this division was not truly about race or background. It was a sinister tool of control, designed to manipulate every aspect of our lives. It pained me to realize that the very thing meant to unite us, our shared humanity, had been twisted into a weapon of separation. As these thoughts swirled in my mind, my own memories surged forth. I recalled moments when I too had listened to these insidious whispers, convinced that the world was against me, that I had no choice but to fight for survival at any cost. The voices had fueled my anger and isolated me further, pushing me into a life of loneliness and despair. Now, seeing the truth laid bare before me, I understood that every ounce of hatred, every shred of division, was nothing more than an illusion, a carefully constructed lie meant to keep us powerless. The sight of these invisible chains and the manipulation they represented left me shaken to my core. I began to feel an overwhelming urge to break free, to shatter the bonds that had long confined us all. I imagined a world where empathy replaced suspicion, where dialogue bridged the gap between hearts once divided by false narratives. In that moment, a spark of hope ignited within me, a determination to reclaim the unity we had lost. Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with sorrow and unyielding certainty. His presence banished the deception that had long clouded our vision. "They are not each other's enemies," he said softly. "The real enemy has blinded you all." His words resonated deeply, a clarion call to awaken from the slumber of manipulated division. I knew then that the battle for truth was not fought with violence or hatred, but with the unyielding light of love and understanding. A light that could, one day, shatter even the darkest of chains. I felt my breath hitch as the vision shifted again, as if the very fabric of reality was being redrawn before my eyes. The once familiar cityscape dissolved into a futuristic metropolis, where towering skyscrapers gleamed under a pristine sky, their reflective surfaces stretching upward like giant mirrors into the heavens. The streets were immaculate, laid out with precise symmetry, and every detail of the scene exuded an unsettling sense of perfection. There was no sign of crime, chaos, or poverty. Everything was controlled, too controlled, as if every element of life had been planned down to the last detail. At first glance, it appeared to be a utopia, a place where human life had been refined to its most efficient and harmonious state. Yet as I observed more closely, a disquieting truth began to emerge from beneath the surface. I noticed that the people moved in unison, their every step synchronized like clockwork. Their eyes were vacant, their faces expressionless. There was no laughter, no questioning, no spark of individuality. It felt as though life itself had been stripped of its soul, replaced by a mechanized existence devoid of true emotion. Then I began to understand how their lives were governed. Instead of carrying wallets or cash, each person bore a tiny glowing mark beneath their skin, just above their wrists. I watched as a woman stepped into a store, selected a loaf of bread, and simply held her hand over a scanner. With a soft beep, her transaction was completed, a seamless exchange that left no room for human interaction or error. This was not merely convenience, it was a quiet surrender of freedom. Beside me, Jesus spoke quietly. It started as a choice. His tone was gentle, yet beneath it lay an undercurrent of regret and sorrow. I saw flashes of the past in my mind. The implant had once been heralded as a marvel of modern convenience. No more lost credit cards, no more forgotten passwords, no more petty theft. People had embraced it wholeheartedly. But over time, what began as an option slowly morphed into an absolute necessity. It became the sole means of identification, the repository for medical records, and even the key to education and employment. Eventually, it wasn't just an option, it became the law of the land. Those who refused the implant were swiftly ostracized, left to languish on society's fringes. I witnessed desperate families on the outskirts, pleading for mere scraps, their hopes dashed as they were systematically excluded from a modern world that had no place for them. The disparity was stark, a chilling reminder that in the pursuit of perfection, humanity had sacrificed its diversity and freedom. Then, as if to punctuate this grim reality, a man emerged. His commanding presence radiated an almost hypnotic charisma and power, a world leader adored by the masses, promising peace, prosperity, and security. Nations bowed to him, and the people cheered his every word. Yet, beneath his polished exterior, I sensed a dark undercurrent. A sinister force clung to him like a second skin, his eloquent promises masking the chains he was slowly fastening around every soul. "They will not see their chains," Jesus warned, his voice laden with sorrow and urgency, "not until it is too late." His words echoed in my ears as I realized that the price of this so-called perfection was the very essence of our humanity. The vision left me with a deep, unsettling understanding that the path to control was paved with the surrender of individuality, and that even in the brightest light, shadows of oppression lurked, waiting to reclaim the freedom that once defined us. I watched as the world continued spinning, completely blind to its own impending downfall. Everywhere I looked, people believed they were free, waking up each morning, heading to work, and mindlessly scrolling through their devices. They accepted every new change without a moment's hesitation, laughing at warnings, dismissing inconvenient truths as baseless conspiracy theories, and trusting a system that was slowly, imperceptibly enslaving them. I felt a deep sorrow in my heart as I realized how thoroughly the masses had been deceived. "They do not see the bars of their prison," Jesus said softly, his voice filled with sorrow and regret. His words pierced through the facade of normalcy, forcing me to confront a reality that was hidden behind a veneer of comfort and convenience. I began to see how fear and comfort had been wielded as powerful tools of control. People accepted the mark, not because they were coerced, but because they had been conditioned from birth to believe that safety, security, and a promise of a better life were all that mattered. They willingly traded their freedom for a false sense of protection, never realizing the immense cost of their compliance until it was too late. Then, amid this sea of passive acceptance, I saw them, a small but defiant group scattered across the world. These individuals, though lacking power, money, or influence, carried an unyielding fire within them. Society had rejected many of them. They were mocked as fools and branded as outcasts. Forced to live in hiding and secrecy, they had become the silent guardians of truth. Their determination shone like a beacon in the overwhelming darkness of ignorance. "These," Jesus declared, his finger pointing toward them with conviction, "are my warriors." My heart pounded as I observed these resolute souls more closely. They did not fight with swords or guns, but with something far more potent: the truth. In the midst of a society drowning in its own illusions, they spoke out boldly, even when their voices were threatened with silencing. They resisted oppressive forces with every ounce of strength they possessed, refusing to bow even when the world seemed determined to crush them. I watched in awe as the very act of speaking the truth caused the darkness to shudder and recoil, as if burned by a fire it could not withstand. With each person who listened and awakened, I saw the invisible chains that had long bound them begin to snap and fall away. A soft, radiant light started to spread, pushing back the shadows that had so long cloaked our hearts. "They do not know it yet," Jesus said, his gaze fierce and full of power, "but these few will shake the very foundation of the world." In that profound moment, I understood that despite the overwhelming conformity and ignorance, hope still burned brightly in the hearts of those few brave souls. Their courage, their unwavering commitment to truth, was the spark that could ignite a revolution, one that might eventually free us all from the chains of deception and control. As I continued to reflect on this revelation, a swell of determination took root within me. I realized that I too had a part to play in this unfolding drama of liberation. I remembered the countless nights spent wrestling with despair, the days when the weight of my own mistakes seemed unbearable, yet now I saw that my past did not define me. It was merely a stepping stone toward a higher purpose. The whispers of the oppressed, the silent cries of the forgotten, echoed in my mind, urging me to speak out, to share the light of truth with others. I envisioned a future where dialogue replaced division, where empathy triumphed over fear, and where every individual reclaimed the freedom that was rightfully theirs. In that vision, I saw the seeds of a new society, one built not on control and conformity, but on love, understanding, and the unyielding spirit of resistance. The path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but the spark of change was undeniable, growing brighter with every awakened heart. And in that moment, I knew that together, even the smallest voices could become a mighty chorus, capable of shattering the walls of oppression and heralding a new dawn for humanity. My chest tightened as I realized just how much I had witnessed, how deeply I had felt. My world had been turned upside down in a matter of moments. Not long ago, I was fleeing from the police, convinced that life was utterly meaningless. And now I had seen the truth laid bare before me. My heart pounded as I stared into the compassionate eyes of Jesus, and I couldn't help but ask, Lord, how can I help them? How can they see? I felt insignificant, a mere street kid who had made mistakes, a kid who had dealt drugs. Yet here I was, entrusted with a truth so vast that the weight of it nearly crushed me. The world around me was lost, blind to the chains that bound it. How could I, with all my shortcomings, possibly awaken people who were so deeply entrenched in their false sense of freedom? Jesus placed a firm yet gentle hand on my shoulder. His touch was both comforting and commanding. "You must tell them," he said, his voice resolute and unwavering. "Some will listen, and some will not, but those who are mine will hear my voice and know the truth." His words reverberated inside me, stirring feelings I had long buried beneath layers of guilt and despair. I swallowed hard, the enormity of the task weighing on me. Would they even listen to me? My mother, my friends, even my community? None of them ever really listened to one another. And here I was, a boy who had been labeled a lost cause, expected to carry a message of hope and truth. Despite my doubts, Jesus' unwavering gaze bolstered my courage. "Speak, Elijah. The truth must be told," he urged. And in that moment, I felt a stirring inside, a force unlike any I had ever encountered. Suddenly, I was enveloped by a powerful presence. It was as if an unseen force had wrapped itself around my very soul. A pull, a command, a calling that I couldn't resist. I knew in an instant what was happening. I was being sent back. Panic gripped me. "No," I gasped, my voice trembling as I clutched desperately at the radiant light and at Jesus' presence. I couldn't bear the thought of returning to that broken world, to the endless pain and despair that had haunted me for so long. "Please, Lord, don't send me back. I don't want to leave you," I cried out, my voice raw with desperation. Jesus' smile was gentle, yet his eyes held a seriousness that pierced through my fear. "Your time is not yet over," he assured me. Slowly, the brilliant light that had once warmed my soul began to fade. The overwhelming feelings of love, warmth, and peace started to ebb away, replaced by a sinking dread. I screamed, "No, please, I can't go back, not without you." But as the world around me collapsed into utter darkness, a crushing weight pressed against my chest. I felt as if I were being squeezed into something too small, too weak, a prison of pain. A sharp, searing agony tore through my ribs, and a deafening noise exploded in my ears. Then, in the midst of that unbearable darkness, I took a desperate gasp. Air flooded into my lungs, and my eyes snapped open to the harsh glare of fluorescent lights. My body was ablaze with pain. Every nerve felt like it was screaming in agony. I heard the incessant beeping of machines, the chaotic shouts of voices, and my mother's anguished sobs. I had returned, I was back, but I knew deep down that nothing would ever be the same again. When I gasped for air, it felt as if I were torn from one realm and hurled into another. My chest throbbed with pain, and my lungs burned, and for a fleeting moment, I questioned if I was truly alive. The harsh, blinding lights above were artificial and cold. Nothing like the radiant, warm glow I had just left behind. Around me, chaos reigned. Machines beeped, footsteps rushed, and overlapping voices created a dissonant symphony. But amidst that turmoil, all I felt was an overwhelming emptiness. I wasn't in his presence anymore. Then a familiar voice broke through the din, raw and desperate. "Elijah, baby, oh my God, Elijah!" My mother's cry pierced my haze. With difficulty, I turned my head, each movement making my skull throb. There she was, gripping my hand tightly, tears streaming down her face as she pressed her forehead against my knuckles. I longed to tell her everything, to say that I had seen him, that I had been with Jesus, but my throat was parched, my lips cracked, and all that emerged was a whisper, "Mama." I saw him. Her head snapped up, swollen eyes searching mine in disbelief. "What? What are you saying?" she demanded. "I saw Jesus," I insisted, my voice barely audible amid the sterile clamor of the hospital. The room fell into a strained silence. Nurses exchanged uneasy glances while the doctor muttered about impossible vitals, as if trying to rationalize a miracle. My mother's face softened from relief to cautious concern. "Baby, you've been through so much. You hit your head really bad. You were gone for almost 5 minutes. You probably just had a dream." I shook my head, desperation rising. "No, Mama, it was real. He showed me everything." Memories surged back, visions of chains of deception, the enemy's false promises, and the slow, insidious technological enslavement that gripped the world. I had seen the plan unfolding, how people were being lured into darkness while believing they walked toward light. But who would believe me? Not the doctors, not my friends who mocked me, and certainly not the pastor who dismissed my experience as just another near-death hallucination. I clenched my fists in silent rage. They couldn't see it. They couldn't feel what I had felt. Then, amidst the quiet despair, I heard his voice again. Not in the room, but deep within my soul. Some will listen, some will not. But those who are, mine will hear my voice. Suddenly, I began noticing subtle signs everywhere. Technology was creeping into every facet of life. Contactless payments, biometric scans, microchip implants promoted as the future of convenience. News outlets stirred division, pitting people against each other while distracting them from a real, hidden battle. And slowly, the world was changing. People were beginning to accept what they once fought against, dismissing it as progress. I knew then that my mission was not to convince everyone. I had been sent back for a reason. Even if my words fell on deaf ears, they were meant for those who truly needed to hear them. I couldn't let others be led blindly into a trap, while I had been shown the truth. At first, doubt gnawed at me. Why would Jesus choose someone like me? I had spent so many years ignoring him, rejecting his guidance, and breaking every rule I knew. But every time I questioned it, flashes of my near-death experience returned. The boundless love in his eyes, the sorrow in his voice when he revealed the deception, and the weight of the truth he had placed upon me. That vision, that divine encounter, was not just a dream. It was my calling, Determined, I began speaking to anyone who would listen. I reached out to old friends still trapped in the vicious cycle of street life. I told them about the danger ahead, about the insidious plans of those in power, and about how we were being conditioned to accept our own enslavement. Most scoffed, some laughed outright, and others simply walked away. But even if only a few paused to truly listen, it would be enough. I pleaded with my mother again, my voice laced with urgency. "Mama, you must believe me. Things are happening, and soon we won't have a choice. You have to trust me." With sad eyes and a gentle touch, she reassured me, "Baby, I trust you. Just focus on getting better." But this wasn't just about recovery. It was about awakening. I began writing down everything I had seen, every warning, every prophecy, every detail Jesus had shared with me. If the world wouldn't listen now, perhaps one day, when the signs became undeniable, they would remember my words. As governments pushed for digital IDs and cash vanished, and as artificial intelligence seeped into every decision, I knew the battle for truth had only just begun. My mission wasn't to force the truth upon the world, but to plant the seeds of awareness. Because those who truly belong to Him will always hear His voice, and in time, they will understand. I was no longer the frightened boy who had run from the police that night. I had been chosen, and nothing, no disbelief, no mockery, no doubt, could silence the truth I now carried within me. If you are reading these words, understand this: it is not a coincidence. There are no coincidences in a world where spiritual forces are at war. Every moment, every decision, every piece of truth you encounter is an invitation, a calling to choose between deception and reality, between blindness and sight, between darkness and light. Right now, at this very moment, you stand at a crossroads. You have two choices. You can continue down the path the world has paved for you, a path of comfort, conformity, and unquestioning obedience. You can believe what they tell you, that everything is under control, that technology is only here to help, that division is natural, that morality is fluid, that truth is relative. You can trust in the promises of governments, of corporations, of leaders who claim they have your best interests at heart. You can close your eyes to the warning signs, convincing yourself that those who sound the alarm are simply paranoid. You can keep moving forward, step by step, until one day you wake up and realize you are no longer free. But by then, it will be too late. Or you can wake up. You can recognize the deception that is unfolding before your very eyes. You can see the invisible chains being placed on humanity, chains of control disguised as convenience, chains of slavery disguised as security. You can understand that the world is not merely evolving, but is being manipulated, shaped into something that was foretold long ago. You can realize that this is not about race, politics, or power. It is about the battle for your soul. And in that moment, you can make the only choice that truly matters. You can turn to Jesus Christ, because only He has the power to set you free. Only He can give you the wisdom to see through the lies. Only He can protect you when the world demands your allegiance to something far darker than you ever imagined. The deception will not stop. It will only grow stronger, more persuasive, more inescapable. It will convince people that resistance is foolish, that standing firm is dangerous, that rejecting the system is impossible. It will lead the world into worshiping a false savior, into accepting chains they cannot see, into embracing destruction disguised as salvation. But those who belong to Him, those who know His voice, will not be deceived. They will stand in the light even as the darkness consumes everything around them. They will endure when the world tells them to bow. They will refuse to take the easy path, no matter the cost. The question now is, which path will you take? If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue sharing these powerful stories and creating a space for open, heartfelt conversations. Click the notification bell so you're always updated when we post new content. Together, let's explore the unseen, celebrate the miraculous, and inspire one another to live with love, faith, and wonder.